first, let me remind you that this session will be recorded. Our NGI Talk guest is someone who, at least in my opinion, needs no presentation at all. In any case, let me tell you that with over 18 years of experience, Irene has been at the forefront of advising a global corporation on innovative IT and communication solutions. Her journey into decentralized technologies began 8 years ago during her research at MIT, where her interest shift towards decentralized identity architectures to combat cybercrime. At Gattaca, Irene and her team are working to create a single digital identity that individuals control, providing seamless access to digital services. So this is it. Thank you, Irene, for joining us today. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jorge, and thank you everyone for joining here today. I hope you're seeing me well and this nice man in front of a window, kind of with little on him. In this talk, NGI Talk episode, what we will delve into is the far lands of privacy and how our careless attitude, coupled with some irresponsive corporate incentives, could lead us to the downfall of the internet. And I know, this might sound dramatic, but hear me out.
Alexa, play my favorite song.
Sure, playing your liked and most played songs.
Does this sound familiar to you? Have you ever done this? Let's face it, we all share vacation pics, constantly search for places in Google Maps, shop all sorts of things we need in Amazon. I'm the first one. Keep our GPS and Bluetooth open all the time in our phones, and now have even some conversations with ChatGPT. The reality is that we live in a world where every move, every search, every purchase is meticulously recorded and analyzed. Now, many of us claim, including me, that we are worried about our privacy. But how many of us really scroll down the privacy policies before clicking accept? Or how many of us erase the contents of an app before deleting it from our phones? We say that we care about privacy, but our actions tell a very different story. This contradiction between stated privacy concerns and online behavior is what I called the privacy paradox. The purpose of this session today is not merely to raise awareness about the implications of selling out our data, but to ignite also a little bit of sense of urgency. It's about understanding the gravity of the situation we're in, recognizing our role in exacerbating it, and also exploring some tangible solutions. We do have solutions for this that can pave the way for a more secure and privacy-respecting internet. So, okay, many of us will say, so what? We don't care about privacy. What's in it? Let's talk about the elephant in the room and this potential downfall of the internet. This isn't just about annoying ads or cookies that I need to accept or reject all the time. Imagine corporations knowing all your political leanings, your health issues, your financial situation, up to a degree where they can really mass analyze and automate business processes. They can target you specifically, influence your opinions, and even limit the information you have access to. This is really a recipe for a controlled online environment. Is this really the future that we want for the internet, for our daughters, our sons? The path that could lead us to this rather pessimistic scenario is quite clear. So first, the internet, we need to admit it, has become a heaven for hackers, for cyber criminals. And we are witnessing this growing trend of massive and ever more sophisticated cyber attacks, which in many cases lead to massive data breaches. And these expose really sensitive information like our financial records, medical data, personal details, which in the end, what leads is to identity fraud, like someone saying or claiming that it's me to access or to have unauthorized access to something that belongs to me, to buy something on my behalf with my money, to access my records, my systems, my accounts. This is becoming a problem. And in the end, what this is leading to unbearable financial losses to both, of course, the individuals, but also to corporations. And in turn, corporations, what they do is to react and impose stricter access controls. And we started with these kind of silly questions that at the beginning, I thought this can't be a security measure. Like, what's the name of your dog? Or tell me your date of birth. And you just had to know the answers to basically get access to something. And then all of a sudden, we live in a world in which my bank knows the name of my dog. And many companies know a lot of information about me. And all of this information feeds a growing database of personal and sensitive data that hackers are ever more attracted to. So they get more sophisticated, they get access to our data, more data breaches, and then the companies have to strengthen their security protocols. So it's no longer a silly question. Now it's two-factor authentication. But I don't trust who you are, so I need you to scan a copy of your national ID to make sure that you are who you claim to be. And all of a sudden, this database is not just about the name of my dog. It's a copy of my national ID. And then that's not even enough. And then I need to use my biometrics. And governments have databases with my biometrics stored in their own data centers. Like, I think you can, you're following me where I'm heading to. You see my point. If we just keep giving up on our personal data without control, we just get into this spiral that already looks bad where we stand today. So this is the situation, but why don't we care enough? Because we don't really care enough. Well, there's technologists, of course, standards organizations like NGI, regulators. We all care about privacy. We all care about security, accessibility. But let's be honest, convenience is king, and it is the most important, ultimate driver for consumer behavior. It's the reality. We readily click accept on endless terms of service without truly understand what we're giving away. It's definitely easier and faster to click a button than to read the privacy policy. It's a cycle of click and forget that leaves our data exposed. But at the same time, oversharing behavior is rewarded in data models, in business models. It's rewarded with a personalized experience, and we like it. So we prioritize personalization over privacy. And the reality is that most of us don't truly understand or grasp the extent on the data collection, like how much information they're really collecting from us, and its potential consequences. So it's also an educational issue. And we can't forget the role that corporations play in this. Like, many companies rely on data tracking to get users with personalized ads, and this constant tracking somehow feels intrusive, raises privacy concerns, but there is a more sinister side to this, because this ad-based business model prioritizes clicks over truthfulness, meaning that misinformation can really spread faster because it generates more revenues. So in turn, what happens is that we create echo chambers of information that not necessarily has to be true. And therefore, users are exposed to information that only confirms existing beliefs, for instance. And individuals, users, play a critical role in exacerbating this issue. Because the problem is no longer about this privacy paradox, is that the new generations openly state that they feel fully careless about their privacy. Like, I don't mind at all. I've talked to individuals that say sentences like, well, I'm a nobody. Who will care about me? Or I have nothing to hide. Or poor the person that needs to listen to what I'm saying to my Alexa commands. I've heard these sentences more than once. Or a more justifiable reason. I like free and I like personalized. If I have to give up my data, so be it. And this is the real problem. We could kill the ads business model, of course, but good luck with that, at least in the short term. But fortunately, there are potential solutions for this in the horizon. And the solution is called decentralized digital identity. Although, honestly, it has taken many names along its brief history: self-sovereign identity, decentralized identity, user-centric identity. They all mean more or less the same. And we're talking here about truly a next generation identity architecture for the internet. So we come from the 50s and 60s from an internet that is based on user accounts and passwords. A truly centralized model where what we do is to create an identity just to access one specific service. And is the service provider the one responsible for managing our identity that can only be used in that specific context? And how do we protect that digital identity? Well, with a username and a password, that's it. That's all we've needed for nearly 40 years. So 10, almost 20 years ago, we started seeing these federated models, the single sign-on with Google, single sign-on with Facebook. And they were truly good in providing a superb user experience, because the old models, well, security was not so good. We all reuse passwords, like it's not really secure. Privacy is zero because I have to repeat my information and create duplicated identities everywhere. And the user experience is terrible. I need to manage hundreds of passwords. But federated models, they're nice. It's like, I just have my Google account. I just have my Facebook account. But the privacy problem has worsened with that, because it's not each company having kind of a piece of me. It's now Google or Facebook knowing everything about me. Not to mention the security aspect. Like, there is absolutely no guarantee of who's behind a Facebook account or a Google account. That's why it's not possible to use that as an authentication method to open a bank account, for instance. So decentralized identities or self-sovereign identities really inverts the role. It's I, as a user, become my own identity provider. So it's not the corporation, it's not an intermediary anymore, it's me. I'm my own identity provider. And that's really the change in paradigm, is me, instead of me creating an identity in a third party, is me letting this third party get access to my identity. It's really an inverted model. And the potential is huge. Let me first explain the triangle, the trust triangle in self-sovereign identity. Because in a self-sovereign identity ecosystem, we still have three main stakeholders. The main components of decentralized identities are, first, the concept of ID wallets. So users manage their own identities by means of an ID wallet, typically an app in your phone. But what's different of these ID wallets? Well, the difference is that with these ID wallets, users can manage a variety of verifiable credentials, and I will get into that shortly. But the third component, critical component of this trust triangle, are the trust registries, the trust framework that you see down there. Let me explain a little bit the trust triangle. So me as a user, I'm now my identity provider. I manage my identity in something that is called an ID wallet that I have in my phone. How does it really work? Well, we have two additional stakeholders. We have issuers And issuers are still responsible for issuing identity credentials. Say a university is still responsible for issuing my academic diploma, my government for my national ID, my employer for my employee card, my hospital for my vaccination records, you name it. This new identity paradigm doesn't try to change the roles that current stakeholders have in an identity model. Issuers are still issuers. The difference is that users now are sovereign in the use and control of those credentials. So issuers, what they do is to hand over these credentials in a digitized format, in a standardized format to the user's wallet. And then users can decide who they share these credentials with in a selectively manner, because when I sign to a service, I don't need to give them access to my whole identity, of course. The fact that it's digital, I can now down select only the necessary information to access that service in one click. So it's the same single sign-on type of user experience, but controlling exactly the information I need to share. And you can even go further with what's called selective disclosure, because now if I want to prove that I'm over age, say I want to access adults content or buy alcohol online, whatsoever, that I need to prove that I'm over age, I need to show my entire ID. And in Spain, for instance, my ID contains my address, the name of my parents, information that this third party doesn't really need to know to sell me this service. So with ID wallets, verifiable digital credentials, it's now possible that I'm not sharing my entire national ID to this third party, but only a proof that I'm over age. So now we're seeing some additional benefits of having this ID wallet. Now, the critical aspect here is that when these third parties receive these credentials, they can be completely sure that these credentials are true and that they belong to me, because the proof of that information is self-contained in the credential itself. It contains cryptographic signatures that attest to the veracity of the information in it and that it belongs to me, the person sharing that credential. And that's the critical piece, because now we no longer need back channels from the verifier, this third party receiving the information, and the issuing authority, which is what happens today. What happens today if I'm sharing an academic diploma to an employer, that employer still needs to go to the university, calls them, hey, can you please verify that this was a student of yours? Because there is a lot of fraud. And the digitized version of the diploma I'm sending is not verifiable. So they need this back channel. With this new decentralized identity model, that's no longer necessary, because that proof is self-contained in the credentials. And this is the magic. This is where the self-sovereign last name of this identity model comes in. I'm sovereign in sharing my information with whoever I want in a direct relationship without the need of involving anyone else. Because issuers really don't need to know who I'm interacting with, who I'm sharing my information with. And then the last aspect of this is trust frameworks that you're seeing here down there. And I'll explain a little bit more about trust frameworks later on. Yes, keep with the notion that trust frameworks are something we need to understand who is an authorized issuer, for instance, because okay, my credential has been issued by this university, and I can know that this has been signed, cryptographically signed by this specific entity, but how the verifier knows that this university is entitled to issue academic diplomas, that it's an actual university in the respective jurisdiction? Well, this is what we need trust frameworks for, which are basically registries of authorized issuers, the data models for official credentials, and some decentralized identifiers that I'm not going to dive into this conversation, at least just yet. So just to move forward, ID wallets, as I said, is the critical piece. What I want to just highlight a few important aspects, because at first, when explaining what decentralized identity architectures are about, the natural reaction from non-technologists is, oh, that sounds scary. Like now, like it's everything in our wallet. What if I lose it? Like, what if someone gets access to it? And then all of these fears appear in a solution that is trying to exactly do the opposite, to infuse trust, infuse security into the identity authentication architecture. So let me emphasize from ID wallets one important aspect. Credentials are stored physically in a mobile device. They're not stored somewhere else. They're in decentralized identity solution. Trust registries are sometimes leveraging blockchain technologies. And so the natural thought from people is, oh, but then now my credentials are stored in blockchain networks. Well, the answer is absolutely not. Credentials are stored physically in the mobile devices. So you are the only person with access to it. Not even ID wallet providers can see what you're doing with your data, what data you have in your wallet. You are the only one responsible and with access and authority to manage your own data. And now, with that in mind, I want to walk you through the new user experience. What's gonna this look like? And give me a second, please. And sorry for my voice. I just got a cold a couple of days ago. So the user experience, we are used to this single sign-on solution. It's like, do you want to log in with your Google account? Oh, yes, sure. Are you okay with sharing this data? You're sure, I consent. Click, I'm in. I don't need to fill up lengthy onboarding forms whatsoever. Now that's true for online services. But what now? I need to go to a hospital. That doesn't work like that. I still receive this paper-based form that I need to fill up manually. Or if I'm lucky, I need to type it up in an iPad whatsoever. I need to open a bank account. I need to follow this onboarding KYC process where I scan my document, my face, I prove that I'm alive. And this is over and over with different services. Now imagine with decentralized identity, these great user experiences, yes, one click, I want to access it, but for every single service worldwide, even if it's opening a bank account, accessing your government services, or getting access to your health data or health records. So that's truly the change, that you can use your digital identity now with this single sign-on experience, but everywhere, for every single service worldwide. What's the user experience? Well, it's as simple as opening your ID wallet, tap to ID. If we're talking about a physical scenario, I'm trying to prove that I'm overage in a bar, I just tap. It can be done with NFC, for instance. If I'm in an online system, I'm browsing with my computer, it's just scanning a QR code. And then my wallet shows me what is the information that this verifier requires from me to share. And then I decide. If it's information I don't want to share with this third provider, I reject. I can't access their service, of course, but I can review the exact information I'm sharing with this third party. I just click consent and voila, I'm in. Imagine opening a bank account just with one click, literally. We would no longer have this vendor locking where all our services are with one same company just because it's cumbersome to create a new account somewhere else. So that's really the combination of a single sign-on, superb user experience and global reach. You can do it everywhere with the security and trust that government IDs can provide. And now you'll ask, yeah, but how far are we from this reality? This all sounds really good. But how far are we from this reality? Well, this is where the Europe is really taking the lead worldwide. It's really amazing the work that Europe has been doing over the past 6 years. And there are kind of two branches of work that has been happening at European level. On the one hand side, we have EIDAS version 2. On the other side, we have all the efforts from EBSI or EFSI. So the legal framework is everything about EIDAS version 2, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. And the other branch, EBSI, is more about a technical framework, a technical infrastructure that can enable decentralized digital identities. And at the center of it, the European Digital Identity Wallet, the EUD wallet. Probably you'll be hearing about this term if you have not just yet, very often, very soon. So let's start with EIDAS v2. What's EIDAS really? What's EIDAS version 2? It is really an update to an existing regulation. That's why it's a version 2. So EIDAS version 1 was accepted. It has been into force since 2014. And what it really established is a common legal framework for government digital identity systems. So it was a mutual recognition of digital identity systems in Europe. So with my Spanish digital identity, I could sign up to a public service in Germany, for instance. Well, that was the theory, at least. Legally speaking, my Spanish digital identity should be recognized as valid in Germany. But that was not the reality. That was not happening. EIDAS version 2 tries to tackle the deficiencies that the version 1 had, and mostly in two aspects. One is in adoption. It was like adoption really fell behind, both at national level. Not every country reported digital national ID systems. And for those countries that did have, adoption was not so great. So the version 2 of EIDAS tries to add on security while improving usability. And how? Well, by the concept of the European ID wallet, which very much lies on the concept of decentralized digital identity that I mentioned before. So in EIDAS version 2, they extended the concept of digital identity wallets, but also a trust service called attestations. So now we have as a trust service the issuance of attestations that could be stored in the wallet. Attestations is just a different name for verifiable credentials. And who is impacted by EIDAS version 2? Well, there are four main stakeholders. For governments, it will be mandatory for them to provide this ID wallet to all their citizens. So that's a change, because now every single government in Europe will have to provide this European ID wallet to their citizens. But most importantly, the private sector, many companies in the private sector will have to accept this as a means for authentication. Which private companies? Well, to start, regulated companies, all of the regulated companies that need to perform strong authentication on their users. For instance, banks that need to provide this KYC process by law, hospitals, education. So all of these companies that need to provide strong authentication, they will have to accept ID wallets as a means of authentication. And let me go beyond that. What Europe calls very large online platforms, VLOP, which are in essence companies that serve over 30 million users across Europe, Amazon, Google, you name it, every single social media platform, every large online platform will have to accept this for authentication. Do you really imagine Amazon accepting ID wallets to authenticate and access my Amazon account? Well, that's going to be a reality. Now, for citizens, it is a right, but never an obligation, very much in what Europe tries to impose as a culture. Now, and when is this EUD wallet going to be in our hands? Well, this is the time frame that we have today. So we have we've been working since mid-2021 on this, Europe in general. So in June 2021, the European Commission announced the proposal for the modification of the eIDAS regulation. And we've come a long way. Almost 3 years later, the Parliament, just in February, finally approved the final text. So this is already a reality. What are the next steps? Well, now we need to wait for between 6 and 12 months until we receive what's called the Implementing Act, which will basically tell us the technical framework and specifications that countries will need to abide to have an homogeneous implementation of this EUD wallet, because in the end, an important aspect of this is interoperability, that with my Spanish EUD wallet, I can do anything anywhere across Europe. And now from that date on, when the implementing acts are live and present, then countries will have 24 months to roll this out in production at national scale all across Europe. So by the end of 2026, we'll have this ID wallet in our hands. And then 1 year later, every single private company that is affected by the regulation will have to accept this already for authentication. So we're looking at 2027, which is not that far, to have this decentralized digital identity a reality in Europe. And believe me, Europe is not the only region working on this concept. Now let's move on to the technical framework. This other branch Europe has been working on, which is EBSI or EBSI. So EBSI stands for European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, and is nothing else than a common good. Is an infrastructure, a network whose nodes are managed by member states, that is intended to basically streamline the interaction between citizens and companies and governments. So it's really a blockchain network, a permissioned blockchain network deployed all across Europe, managed by member states, and offered as a public good. It was initially launched by the European Blockchain Partnership, which is an association of all member states with representatives of all member states, in coordination with the European Commission. And so they've built this infrastructure, and they're working on specific use cases, verticals, that could initially trigger the use of this public good. So what are the core components of EBSI? To start, it's the infrastructure that can offer this trust framework I was talking about in the trust triangle. So it's an infrastructure where Europe can store their trust registries, the list of official issuers, the list of official universities that are authorized to issue academic diplomas, the list of credentials in the education space, like my educational ID and its data format, my academic diploma and its data format, my social security card and its data format. All of that, all of these trust registries can be stored on EBSI. And many countries, many use cases, many sectors are already working on it. Now, this infrastructure needs an identity layer, and Europe and the European Commission and the European Blockchain Partnership understood this very early on, and they created this European Self-Sovereign Identity Framework, which is nothing else but a set of technical specifications on how a decentralized identity architecture should work on top of this EBSI infrastructure. And for that purpose, they need technology providers. They need companies that provide ID wallets and that provide tools for issuing authorities to issue these credentials, and that provide tools for verifiers to be able to authenticate and verify these credentials. Well, for that reason, EBSI is building also conformance testing to make sure that every single vendor across Europe offers interoperability at European scale. And it also has ignited a super nice community of sectors, organizations in both the public and private sector across different waves of what they called early adopters. So they helped governments, they helped universities, and they helped social security authorities to start building use cases, real use cases on top of this infrastructure. And now NGI also helps into this because this is very nicely tied together. NGI then launches a project called ESIF Lab, European Self-Sovereign Identity Laboratory, where it finances a bunch of projects and a bunch of innovators and a bunch of companies trying to provide the cornerstones of this decentralized identity architecture that is really made of a lot of complex components that need to be from scratch. So NGI also contributing to this, into building everything that we need. So we got this legal framework, we got this technical framework. Where do we stand now? My last contribution, and I promise is the last one, is about who's working already on this in Europe. And for that, I have to name the large-scale pilots, LSPs. There are currently 4 large-scale pilots that are funded by the European Commission, the adoption of ID wallets and this decentralized identity architecture leveraging eIDAS version 2, because understanding it is really a change in paradigm, and that a lot of things will need to change in the internet. European Commission is committed to making this happen in really a linear way, trying to get early on companies understanding their impact on their core business processes, on their systems, on their people. And so they decided to fund 4 large-scale pilots. And they're large, or they're called large, because they're actually large in terms of the number of organizations and countries involved in each one of these use cases. And its pilot is focused on different use cases based on this concept of an EUD wallet. So we have potential, for instance, they are the richer in terms of use cases they're exploring, with use cases like opening a bank account or getting a SIM card, or e-prescription, having in my ID wallet e-prescription, digital signatures, you name it. I think there are 6 use cases in total. We have DC4EU, in which we've been involved in, that are focused primarily on the social security use case and the higher education use case. So how to issue academic diplomas across Europe in a way that can be instantly verified and trusted across the whole Europe, especially with this European student mobility that we've set up as with the Erasmus program. Then we have the EWC that are focused mostly on payments and travel, and also identity for legal persons, because it's not just digital identities for citizens. There is also a need to create digital identities for companies that also interact with government services, with banking services, etc. And finally, NOVID, that are mostly focused on the payments use case. As you can see here, there are like 56 organizations across 20 countries. It's really complex yet very rewarding experience that each one of these pilots are getting. And with that, I wanted to finalize recapping on my initial thoughts, because the internet has truly revolutionized our lives. It's true. And I have to say that the future is a little bit uncertain. Decentralized digital identities, in my personal opinion, are the future. But we aren't quite there yet. We still need 3, 4, 5 years. In the meantime, there are things that we can do. We need corporations to be more responsible with data, and we users need to be definitely more mindful. We need to hold corporations accountable for our data security, our privacy, and we need to promote a responsible online behavior, because it's a collective responsibility to ensure that the internet remains a force for good, a platform for connection, and definitely a pool of knowledge for generations to come. Thank you. So please, if you have questions, I'm all yours. Jorge, I don't have access to the public chat. You may write your questions directly in the chat. Well, I think I did a great job at clarifying what decentralized digital identities is all about. If you want to reach out to me, you can, shoot us an email. I'll be gladly supporting you in whatever doubt you have. Here are my contact details below. It seems that Javi Crows has a question. Not sure if you can just unlock your microphone or just type the question in. There you go. Okay, so you're asking what would you say is the role of new social institutions? Could you further explain, like, what do you mean by social institutions? Data trust. Okay. Let me go back to trust triangle, because on the one hand side, we still have issues. A government will still be responsible for issuing, let's say, as an example, your national ID. So issuing authorities will still have their data pools with your information that they will use as a source of trust to then issue the credential back to you. Now, the difference here is that this data is handed over in a sovereign manner to the user directly, to the citizen, that can now decide what to do with it. Meaning, same with money. The government gives me a note, I have a note, now I can decide what to do with it. The issuing authority doesn't know what I do with it. This is kind of digitizing, and this is what happened with Bitcoin. That's why it was so revolutionizing, because it's mimicking the benefits of physical interactions. Now, I'm still not quite sure what you mean with data coops, or which institutions are you talking about. What I want to make sure is to understand that there will still be pools of data for which organizations will be responsible for protecting, responsible for keeping up to date and making sure no one gains unauthorized access to it. So what we're trying to avoid is the concept of data pools that serve the only purpose of intermediation, or trying to avoid companies having to store these data pools when they don't really need to store them. They just need to get the information, verify it's true, and they can move on. So we're in a world where eventually me as a citizen can have my own security vault online in the cloud and not physically stored in my mobile device. Then further benefits can be unlocked, because then verifiers will never have to store data ever again. But that's a longer story. Not sure if I'm answering your question, but hope I did. You're welcome. Any more questions? Alice, you seem to be typing. I'll wait for you.
Alice, I have unlocked you, so please try to enable your microphone.
You're welcome. You say, I would like to ask how you ensure reliability, because you say everything is stored on my personal phone. So why if I lose my phone? That's an excellent question, Alice. And it's the first question that everyone has when first hearing about ID wallets. Well, there are certainly already solutions, but they're not trivial. Let me explain why. It's true that I have everything in my phone. If I lose my phone, I lose my ID. Think about the physical world. I have all my IDs, my physical IDs, in my wallet, in my purse. What if I lose my wallet? What's happening today if I lose my wallet? Well, I have to go reissue my national ID, reissue my credit cards, and it's really a nightmare. People are scared of losing their wallets because the process of rebuilding the wallet is a nightmare. Now, in the digital world, in digital ID wallets, that process does not necessarily have to be that cumbersome, because now it will be possible to receive all of these credentials in a one-click type of user experience as well. So I could go back to my government, like open like a new wallet, create, go to the government website and say, download again my national ID credential. Bloop, and kind of in one click, I have it already. So to start, the redoing an ID wallet is definitely way better than the experience we have today with physical documents, but that doesn't really solve the problem. So there are what's called backup and recovery solutions. We've already worked on one that was subsidized with a research project from Neotech, a government entity, national government entity in Spain with European funds, which was basically how to build a trustworthy backup and recovery mechanism for ID wallets. Well, it's not trivial for one main reason, which is the concept of private keys, because everything I do with my wallet is signed with my private key. And my private key is stored in what's called the secure enclave of the device, which is a special part of the memory of my device that gets automatically erased if someone tries to hack into it. Like it's not possible to try to extract that information from your phone. Any attempt, everything deleted, which means you can no longer use, of course, your wallet. But it's good because if you lose your phone, at least you have the confidence that they will not be able to use your wallet on your behalf. So that's a good thing. I lost my phone. I'm not worried that someone will be impersonating me. Great. But now I want to, restore my wallet. So this backup and recovery, how do I do it without access to my private key that in the end unlocks everything I have in my wallet and I have encrypted in my wallet? Well, there's certain mechanisms that allow to replicate the contents of my wallet to a second device and then disable the lost device. And so you have a backup device with your ID wallet. So there are certain ways to do backup and recovery. They're not trivial. They're not as easy as exporting my wallet, having this file stored somewhere, and then just downloading it again in my wallet. It's technically speaking not that simple, but from the user experience, it kind of feels like that. No, that's the point. It's an interesting conversation. This is the concept of backup. Like in our research project, what we did, and we don't have it, for instance, in the public version of our ID wallet on the app stores, because we're waiting for Europe to define the technical specifications for these backup and restore capabilities. But we're certain that our solution can meet all the privacy and security concerns that you're actually raising. Because yes, what I do is I replicate the contents of my wallet into a different device. It does not mean that I have the wallet stored in my Google Drive cloud. It means that I'm replicating everything to a second device, because it's important to make sure that the private keys that govern a wallet are never stored with the backup file, never, ever in the cloud. So if you have this backup file encrypted, you can store it wherever you want. That's fine and secure, as long as the private keys are not encrypted within the same file. It's a more complex and technical conversation, but the main concept that we're proposing for backup and restore is basically a replication in different devices that have all the security measures that we request from a device to hold an ID wallet, which means it has to have a secure enclave or an HSM, or it has to have biometrics enabled, in-device biometrics enabled, etc., etc. So there are a lot of security concerns, and that's why we don't just store it in the cloud. It's not just that. It's making sure that whatever device actually manages that identity or that set of credentials, the necessary security controls to ensure the integrity of data. You're welcome. Well, it seems that we've reached the end. Thank you very much for listening. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I regularly post in NGI's community. So I invite you all to join the NGI forum and the community to read everything NGI is doing for the future of the internet, which is surely a very important job that we all should care about. Thank you very much for your time.